Elizabeth, I am so excited to be here with you. I know that we've been planning on having this conversation for a few weeks now. We put it out in the universe and we got so many questions back. And it's such a great topic, right? It's Mental Health Awareness Month. We kicked off May with the first week being Maternal Mental Health Awareness Month. And the question that we asked the world out there, and we got some of their questions back, was on the topic of how partner dynamics impact mental health during the perinatal journey. So let's jump in. I would love to introduce everyone who is listening or watching to our friend of Poppy, psychotherapist Elizabeth Barron. And we are going to be answering these questions about the relationship dynamic in today's conversation. Elizabeth, thanks so much for joining me.
For having me back, Simmone. And I'm so looking forward to this. When you guys called me and said, we have this topic and we get all these questions, and I think you'd be perfect to chat about this. It just felt so perfect, because what a needed, infrequent, and open and important conversation to be having, especially during Maternal Mental Health Month, about the unbelievable shift in dynamic when it comes to partners when we're having babies. And today I'm hoping to destigmatize so much of what we know to be true about what changes during the perinatal time period for new and expecting moms. I mean, I spend so much time in my practice all day long helping women just hold space for the fact that these are real feelings about their relationship. And so let's hopefully help someone else today feel less alone, and maybe hopefully leave with some ways to combat some of the isolation or the sadness or the despair that they feel in their relationship right now.
Yeah, totally. That's such a great overview to kick us off. And, for the next 15 or 20 minutes, I mean, we really did have to sift through so many of the questions that came in to us. So I'm going to dive right in. The first question is: the fertility journey into pregnancy and postpartum has totally changed me. Why do I feel so distant from my partner now?
Oh my God. I want to hug that mom. I feel like I'm going to say that a lot because the questions just felt so from the heart. So I'm so glad we got such honest questions. I guess here I want to introduce just this identity shift that you and I talk about, I think, all day long in our businesses. So we go from being partners to parents. I just want to repeat that. We go from being partners to parents, but there's no process. There's no education. There's no class to take, right? And this happens overnight. And often what I hear about is sort of people in their relationships before they had babies went from talking about maybe struggling about what should we eat for dinner, where should we go on vacation, to all of a sudden baby making and creating life. And this comes with responsibility, right? And also a lot of anxiety. And I think this dates back to the preconception time period for most of the women I treat. And I know for the ladies listening here that is when they remember feeling distant from partners, all the way back in preconception, right? Like finding the clinician or the practitioner to do pre-genetic testing maybe, and even managing that anxiety. Or it was just the deliberation about trying to conceive, right, Simmone? Like the timing of when or how, and how will that impact my identity and my career and my friendships? These are things that partner isn't yet privy to. So I think it was important today to sort of normalize for a second that it starts way further back, this it's all on me thing, which is really our theme for today, right? And that it's really before our bodies even change that women start to feel distant from their partners. So one thing to think about for everyone listening is just to talk about this, right? I mean, I was asked to give some practical tips today, but when I think about it, and I want to introduce this form of treatment I use, I'll use it later on, but just starting to talk about this dynamic between the two of you way earlier on than we think is necessary.
Totally. We get a lot I have no idea how to say this to my partner. I don't even know where to start. And so, sometimes fine, have the conversation with a friend, someone that you trust, or even
Yeah.
role play a little bit, if that makes sense. And then you can have the conversation with your partner, but, not even knowing where to start. The point is to start somewhere, right? Because I love what you said, that it probably had been happening, right? It started way before in the preconception.
Yeah.
Um, okay, great. So the second question that we got, is actually really interesting. I'm interested to hear more from you about this. And
Mm.
that is, the question is, I'm pregnant with my second. Why do I feel so rageful and irritable toward my partner? I mean, from everything that I've heard, I thought it was 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, it didn't matter how many kids are, but this is very specific about
Yeah.
the second.
Well, let's
So
think about
curious.
that. Like there might be a mom who could have written that today, right? About their third or even their first, which we got millions of those about their first. But for their second, Simmone, I feel like let's just sort of think about this mom's experience who wrote in, right? Like her mental load, her life has changed significantly since having one, right? Maybe her intimacy, which we're going to talk about with her partner, maybe her identity, her career, her friendships, like everything has changed for her. And I think a lot of the time we think that, but when someone's ready to have a second, like they're good totally from a mental health perspective, maybe their needs are being met, but that's often not the case. And people don't just have babies because, more babies because they're perfectly happy and joyful in their life. Like
Sure.
motherhood is this wide, wide range of experiences and emotions, as we know, and we're going to talk about today. But now we added in another child, more mental load, more balls in the air, more hats that we're wearing. And like, of course, women feel more rage and resentment. I think already moms are used to asking partners, can you watch the baby? Like, is it a good time to shower? Which is enraging. Like, it's just totally enraging. And I validate that all day long for my moms. And then with number two, it's that like on steroids, it's totally exasperated, right? Exacerbated because mom can't even really take breaks without the child, maybe on a weekend or in the evening. And there's two bedtimes now and two baths and two kids to feed. So I see so much more resentment with number two and three and four, as you say, right? Because there's more bodies, more responsibility, more stuff to manage, and more emotion for sure.
I think that's going to resonate with so many people. Do you think, Elizabeth, that you can even touch a little bit on PMADs here?
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
think it's really important in this conversation, is from one to multiple children.
Totally. Well, it makes me remember when I said earlier, like sometimes we don't have a second child because we're great and our PMAT is treated or our needs are being met. Like often there's other sort of factors here at play. And so as you asked, PMADS, for anyone who doesn't know, is an acronym that stands for perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, which is a long way of talking about what many of you know as postpartum depression. And Simmone, we bonded over this years ago when I remember talking to you about the fact that like we got to get rid of this postpartum depression talk and talk about PMADS because it's a group of illnesses, an umbrella term that encompasses a wide range of illnesses that take place from pregnancy and postpartum. And it's not just depression, it's anxiety, it's OCD, it's PTSD, it's bipolar disorder, and in the most severe cases, psychosis. So to answer how they connect, how they work together, is absolutely if someone's at risk of developing a PMAD or is struggling, right? Or is just going through what we know is a massive transition. We can talk about matrescence later on too. We are
Yeah.
absolutely more at risk to be harboring a ton of more resentment, anger, irritability. That's really speaking to the fact that like something is not right at our core. It could be about basic needs, but it could also be that we're depressed or anxious or feel unseen by a partner or invisible or lost in our identity. So PMADs might be at play. And if they are, I want everyone to know they're treatable. There are places to go. Contact me if you need help and or Simmone. This is what we do like in our sleep is get people connected to meaningful treatment because it exists. And you don't have to walk around feeling rageful and resentful all day long. And yet often part of it is a piece of the motherhood space. And we want to help you manage that and combat some of it.
Mhm. And before I move on to the next question, I just want to add to that because I think it's so important for me to say that we hear all day long that no one even knows where to start,
Mhm.
right? Or how to say that they're having more than maybe just a bad hour or a couple of hours. Maybe it's been a few days, maybe it's been a few weeks. But knowing that there are safe spaces, there are so many, and you're so worthy of getting the support, even if you don't know what that support looks like. But sometimes, and it is true that saying things out loud, someone else can hear it in a very different way, in a good way, right? And I think that's really important as it relates to PMADs. All right, I want to make sure that we really dig into this next question, because it is the sex question. And I'm putting it smack dab in the middle of the questions, because I feel like we are doing, I think everyone who's listening has just probably perked up, because this is so true. And it's a question I think so many people have. And that is, I'm never in the mood to have sex anymore or be intimate in general 1 year after having a baby. And actually, the way that this is listed for me is with a period instead of a question mark. So it's a definitive statement. But I guess the question would be, the question could be what to do, or how do I get back in the mood, or is
it normal? Is it normal? Right. Which, like, yeah, of course. I mean,
right.
Two things that come to mind before I jump in, and yay for this question, and yay for someone submitting it, for everyone else who didn't feel comfortable, is I want to talk about sleep, because you won't believe, I don't know if anyone on this call has ever thought about the connection between sleep and sex, but I do all day long. And so we're going to talk about it. But two is this like sort of postpartum forever thing. I think a lot of women come to this period of time being like, well, the 6-week mark, my doctor gave me the green light. She told me to exercise, what? And have sex. And I'm not interested in either. I'm beyond confused about, I'm bleeding out of both ends. I'm a wreck. I'm emotional. My nipples are bleeding. Like, why would I ever want my partner to come near me? And so I first want to sort of challenge this systemic notion that 6 weeks is this green light. And then I also want to challenge this question, which is like, even at 1 year postpartum, where you hear judgment and like self-criticism that she's not ready, because postpartum is forever. And some women are more feeling more ready, more connected at 6 months, 1 year. I even have moms at 2 years postpartum ask me this question. So I felt like I had to first sort of debunk that, but I want to go back to sleep for a second and sex, right? So as it's Maternal Mental Health Awareness Month, we just talked about PMADs. Sleep is a cornerstone of mental health, right? And sleep deprivation, I know we know this, can exacerbate symptoms of depression, anxiety, OCD, even PTSD. So many individuals struggling with PMADs, or just who had babies, also have difficulty sleeping, right? And consequently, this is like a vicious cycle where lack of sleep increases anxiety, irritability, and it inhibits sleep. All of this to say, intimacy obviously is connected to desire. And I think they're all here, like one yucky, vicious cycle for a postpartum relationship and marriage. So when then we think about sex as part of love languages, it makes me think about how a mom might never, ever, ever look at their partner the same until the partner says something to them like, you want me to give you a shift tonight so you could have 4 to 6 hours? Now I'm in the mood, baby. Like
that's aphrodisiac. That's a turn on.
Like, why aren't we thinking about how mom's needs have changed before she could remotely expose her body and get in the mood, right? Like, what about if our needs really have changed? What if sleep is something that is controlling mom's mental health, right? And the inability of it? What if love languages have shifted? I think I'll make you laugh that a family I worked with just yesterday, I asked if I had permission, that we've been working so hard on this exact issue. They've struggled so much with intimacy. They're on the birth of their second, and partner finally, after 3 years of working together, was like, patient, mom, it seems like breastfeeding is really hard for you right now. Should we talk about permission to stop? And she came to me and said, it was the first time something happened in her body that signaled, obviously not in that moment, she wasn't going to pounce, but she just felt connection again. And I think before we can talk about sex, we have to talk about how to connect differently during this time period. Am I making sense?
Oh, a whole lot of sense, right? It's also just the evolution hormonally of what's happening with a body, with someone who's just given birth. And I'm saying just given birth. I mean, this question was really around it's 1 year later, but still your body has changed so much, right? May not ever hormonally even be the same pre-baby. And in some ways that's the beauty of having a baby, right? Is that your body is evolving too. And so things may have shifted, things may not be the same. I'm a big advocate for throwing in things that might help you along. Find some favorite lube if that's not even something that you ever even thought about, but something that might be really exciting for you now. Toys in the bedroom. I mean, I know this is not what the question asked explicitly, but I could tell you that they're just as your body is evolving, the things that used to turn you on before baby may not be the same things that turn you on now, and exploring that with your partner and having that openness is really important.
The
And
openness there, Simmone, that word, right? Because I
yeah,
think, I mean, it just always makes me think about the opposite. There's so much omission around this topic because it's awkward or it's scary, or like we used to have sex every day, and like just
mhm,
talk about it's so scary, and yet the
yeah,
openness around it makes it feel so much less scary, right?
right. Totally. Can we talk about this one word? Because this is coming up more and more, and I don't know that I don't know if it's a generational thing. I don't know if it's like a modern parenting thing, but my mother would have described me as attached to her hip or clingy.
Mm.
Now, especially I think as it relates to this sex question, the word is being touched out. So I'm
Oh, yeah.
hearing touched out. Okay, define that for us first. What does touched out mean? And how does that maybe relate
Oh,
to
yeah.
wanting to be intimate with your partner?
It's funny because I can't yet hear the connection between you were on mom's hip at the birthday party and shy and like needed a minute because it was overstimulating, to like touched out, which to me, right, in the lens of how I treat women, has all to do with the fact that everything is preoccupied around the baby, right? So when I think about touched out, baby and children, because it's not to say like toddlers aren't a lot. They like my daughter, my big daughter, she's 3 and she wants to be held all the time too right now. So, but like let's not pathologize that ish.
Yeah.
I think that there's a preoccupation that takes place in the postpartum for many women, both with PMADs and those without, right? So we call this like maternal preoccupation. It's the gatekeeping. So it's the breastfeeding, it's the wake windows, it's the bottle feeding, it's the spit up all over us, it's the need to be next to each other, it's the soothing, it's the rocking, it's just a lot. And so this is actually for some women in the postpartum 24 hours of the day. So this idea that we're overstimulated and beyond touched out by a baby and other people. If anyone's ever had a visitor come to meet a baby and they like get in your face, right? They're taking pictures of the iPhone, like of your boob while you're breastfeeding. I mean, it's so infuriating. No wonder when mom has the ability to say no to a partner, but not to a baby, we
Mhm.
see that more often. So I hope that
Mhm.
helps differentiate not only what touched out is, but why we prefer to sort of close out a partner often in the postpartum from a sex perspective, rather than we have no choice with a baby. We have to feed them, we have to care for them. We don't get a break from them and our touching sort of nature. And then the attachment piece, skin to skin, yada, yada, yada. You know?
Totally. Totally. Okay, thank you for defining that for us. I'm
Sure.
going to shift gears a bit because this next question is not only an important question, but as it relates to mental health, I think it's one of these things where there are individual journeys and then there's the journey of the person who had a loss. So the question is, I had several miscarriages and now we have a rainbow baby. But I feel like my husband will never really get everything I went through. How do I not resent him?
Oh my gosh. Well, welcome to therapy for a very long time, because I also want to hug this mom too, like who's been through it all. And my goodness, sometimes really this takes a long time to get through. I think I want to sort of talk about grief and loss again, and also just for a second normalize the fact that for so many moms who've been through infertility and loss in any shape or form, there's like that much more pressure to be happy and like all loving and like all encompassing with both the baby and partner. Like, aren't we so lucky now? And people, and maybe care, like well-intentioned people often say to those who've been through loss, like, aren't you so happy now? And what if mom is really struggling and at the same time loves their baby, right? Like it gives mom not a lot of room to figure out how they're really feeling when they're totally, totally, totally more overcome, I think. And that there's a higher expectation on them to like be so happy in love with the baby. So then we think about partner, who their body didn't go through this. Their mind hasn't been counting the minutes to make sure that this wasn't going to be a stillborn. And often, again, when we talk about this throughout our discussion already, we're talking about openness, loneliness, isolation. We need a partner who's willing, right, to simply hold space. I think they can't take it on all the way. And this is actually what I do a lot with my moms is we talk about what it's like to accept the fact that partner won't ever totally get it, that maybe joining a support group is better because that's where we need the kind of visibility and validation that partner can't give you. These are like hard things to go through, right? Where your
Yeah.
partner, before you have a baby, is like supposed to be this all knowing, this all 100% there for you. Like they make it all better. And yet, what if they can't and they don't? So that might be a little like a curveball here, but I think that instead of distancing from partner and saying like you don't get it, it's sort of like, what does that partner need to know? What's the piece that other people don't know so that you can connect through that feeling of, I'm really happy the baby's here. And I feel far from you sometimes because you didn't go through this necessarily like I did. I can
Mhm.
also introduce here the dialectic for a second, but I want to give you the mic back if you had a comment.
No, first of all, Elizabeth, this is where I think that if you have access to couples counseling or couples therapy, this is the time to do it. Um, Partners have their own emotional journeys with loss, and so does the birthing person, right? The person who has gone through the loss. I know this really intimately. It's part of my own lived experiences and my own journey and very complicated journey to parenthood, which I'm still on. But having multiple pregnancy losses can be so tough to explain. To the outside world. And so you've gone through this thing with this person, and even that can be really tough. But couples therapy, I found was, a real saving, was saving not just even to, my partner and me at the time, but for our own individual emotional needs, right?
Sure.
Because we experience things differently. So I'm really, really happy that this person submitted the questions. And then you said you had some, well, you used the fancy words, but I think you said dialectics.
Dialectical behavioral therapy, but I
Yeah,
just wanna, I mean, Simone, what an important, disclosure, and, I'll feel like I wanna give you a hug now too, as I think about, again, what it feels like to really exist in that place for all the women listening and to
right.
feel far from a partner. I do agree with you that couples is so important and actually cathartic. And also I want to do another shout out for group support there, because I think
Oh, yeah.
once women in the room don't have to explain what it feels like to leave the hospital maybe with a baby, or what it felt like to have that ultrasound tech at 11 weeks tell you again about another loss, and your partner is sort of like, it's just another loss, we'll be fine, we'll get there, right?
Mhm,
But if
mhm.
other women in your support group we're like, "Oh my god, how bad was her face that time? Like, was it startled, right? What was that like for you?" They might actually be able to fulfill a need that you didn't even know you had, which is from a group support perspective, we see that being a wonderful, wonderful, tool. So
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, great. I'm going to move on. We just have a couple more questions
yeah,
here. I want to ask for help, but I feel like my partner does everything wrong. Like the way he holds the bottle even bothers me. How do I ask for help without being annoyed?
Oh my God, I love it. It makes me think about like, lady, it's not about the bottle. It's not about the angle of the bottle at all. It is totally a projection of this feeling, not only maybe of, you know, they do everything wrong.
Yeah.
Um, and or like you need a break.
Yeah.
This is really what I want to
Yeah.
say to her. But but the bothersome, the annoyance, the disconnect, it's all happening obviously based on what we were talking about before. My favorite analogy for this is like, if you ever get a full latte and it keeps like dripping down the street, but then someone walks into you and explodes, like this is just your explosion, lady. And we
Mhm.
need to take care of you and also help give you some tools and solutions to talk to your partner about what's really underneath the
Mhm.
bottle explosion, right? So partners often want to problem solve, or partners often, like many people and humans, are defensive when they're told they're doing something wrong. So instead of a mom screaming, the angle is wrong and it's nipple confusion or whatever the hell she might say,
Mhm.
I might want a mom to say something like, or a partner to say to mom, I don't feel like we're acting like a team. Actually, I don't feel like we're even acting like a family. It feels like me versus you. It feels like it's not about us anymore. And it's all sort of like this, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes a hug in this situation can be just cathartic to slow down, to bring our blood pressure down, to pause and to reevaluate what we can do from here. I really want to also think about the fact that, sometimes it can be really hard, though. I think this is easier said than done, to slow down and be like, you're doing a great job. But if you hold the bottle this way, like cut the shit and just say something like, can we figure this out together? It's not feeling right. So,
Yeah. Right. Totally. I also, it is so okay to be annoyed. Like t- it's so okay to be annoyed. And I think
yes.
that there's validation there. It's the communication that happens during it. And by the way, it's so okay to be annoyed, but it it can be really hard to have this pent up
Mhm.
annoyance that then turns into resentfulness, that then turns into like whatever else on that spectrum, right? As we think about
Screaming,
um,
anger, yelling, no sex. Yeah.
yeah, and, like the partner dynamic. And so like don't keep it all in either, right? Like so anyway, there's that balance. But it is totally okay to be annoyed.
Yeah.
We get
Well,
asked so much, are these things normal? Annoyance, I can tell you, is normal.
it's so normal and it's so understandable. If you again think about partners to
Yeah.
parent, like we
Yeah.
have to celebrate this shift as being like, we're figuring it out. I'm not sure you'll always be that annoyed. And yet, especially in those young years, it's
Yeah.
infuriating to try and even remotely act like a team when you're again sleep deprived, maybe a PMAD's at play, and still parenting is hard. And anyone who
Yeah.
tells you it's not is lying. That's a
Yeah.
fact, right?
Totally. Totally. Okay, two more questions. I obsess about my marriage and whether I'm with the right person constantly. It's gotten so much worse since having our baby.
I mean, Simmone, I hope you believe me when I say, like, I think I get this every day in my practice, and I see
Wow,
many.
really?
Yeah, see,
Yeah.
everyone says that if I tell them the truth. And part of it is that, we think a lot in clinical terms in the postpartum. What happens frequently is women are fantasizing and trying to escape certain realities that feel like put on them and that they don't have control of. And so I see a lot of fantasy making in the postpartum that again we normalize and I make space for. And often when a mom just says that line, did I make the right choice? And I don't like flinch or judge or say, what did you just say? And instead say, like, tell me more, right? And do you sometimes fantasize about living somewhere else, living with a different person, having different economic freedom, maybe not having babies? Like in maybe a social group at a cocktail party, someone might be like, Elizabeth, why would you ever say that? And yet, if I'm going to introduce the dialectic here, it really belongs. It's this modality of treatment. It's called DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, which helps us tolerate really opposing feelings that exist at the same time. Like
Mm,
motherhood and parenting and life for that matter, as humans, we all feel opposing feelings at the same time. And like, we have to normalize and talk more about this so that women can say things like, I love my partner. And sometimes I do wish that I married someone who was more X, Y, or Z, right?
Mhm.
Then when
Mhm.
we say it out loud, I think it feels like you said before, so much less scary and so much more just like thoughts. Like we all just have thoughts. So why not talk about them? Obviously, it could hurt people's feelings. And again, what a great way to ask for couples therapy, to really have someone hold space, to help facilitate, to manage emotions, to make sure people feel safe. But like, let's just think about these as thoughts, the fantasy life, rather than, anything more pathologizing than that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think also very practically sometimes, we don't always talk about what we think our parenting styles are going to be. I know that sounds so fundamental, especially because we're having this conversation and, we're talking about parenting, but I can't tell you how many folks come to us at Poppy Seed Health or that just in my own circles where it's like, you talked about everything. You talked about finance, about parents, family dynamic, all these things, but parenting style. And part of that is because majority of the time you're not a parent, right? Going into that partnership and you're having your baby or babies together and building your family. But that parenting style conversation, I am all for. Like, I want to normalize the what kind of parent do you think you're going to be conversations, because it's a tough thing to figure out or that gets uncovered after, you're married and you start your family. And by the
Yeah.
way, your marriage might have been great before or not great, like whatever it is, but becoming a parent is a whole different life transition
Of course,
that
I'm
uncovers
like,
so
Simone, there's another business idea for us to get
yeah.
busy on. It's so challenging because like my husband would hear that and be like, what? I didn't know the difference between gentle parenting and this person
Yeah,
and this and this when you were pregnant. Like, and yet, oh my God, could you imagine how much more secure and connected parents would be if we could help teach them not only how to get a baby out, but how to take care of one together and take care of mom and partner's emotional mind and mental health. Now I could go on all day. So stop me now because
totally. No, I'm not going to stop you because we have one more question. Let's get to that last question before we wrap up our time together. And that is, everyone says you fall more in love with your partner after having a baby, but I feel totally distant. Is there something wrong with us? I love that last part of this. Is there something wrong with us? Not is there something wrong with me? Is there something wrong with us?
I mean, what's striking to me as both a mother and a clinician is just how much we don't share our relationship difficulties with others in fear of how we'll be perceived, in fear of what that would mean to say it aloud, right? In fear of the reality of that. And my goodness, how much more again, rage, irritability, and how much like lack of love I see when people just feel so isolated in their own experience. So I think there is so much disconnection when we feel like ships passing in the night with our partners. It is totally not wrong to feel a little bit less in love, like there's fireworks, like there's magic. Hopefully it will come back. It could take a really, really long time. And I want to normalize that too, right? That like it is a process. It makes me think about the idea of matrescence again, that motherhood is and parenthood is a developmental process, one that takes time and is not just a physical shift. It's an emotional, spiritual, and identity shift, all these things. So can we think about our partnerships like that too? Like it's a process. And gosh, I wish I could say to this mom too. I am saying to you, there is nothing wrong with the two of you. And hopefully you'll find each other again. And if not, again, call us and we'll help you find someone to help you navigate that process to find each other.
Yeah, totally. And I just, we have all of the parts of our community that's there to support us in different ways, right? And I think it's really important to be able to either be the couple or the person in the partnership or whatever, but to have people in your life who are actually not BSing you when they're like, listen, this has been so hard. Like, we haven't had a date night in I don't know how long, right? We have no time to do these things. Or
Yes.
like, oh my goodness, I just like, if I have to do one more load of laundry, and you have couples, or you have partners around you that are actually having these true, honest conversations, you can actually find community in that, because it can feel really isolating and alone. But I will say that I think so many couples go through this. I mean, partners 100% will go through the ups and downs of being a new parent, what that looks like. And I think the deeper that we can get with empathy and compassion, and as Elizabeth said, also the tools and access to those tools, will hopefully help with what
Yeah.
I know for sure is a mental health care crisis in our country, as it relates to new parents, that perinatal stage, and partners, and how important it is for us to be able to have what we need to support ourselves and each other.
Agree with that. And I just want to add just a practical tip there too. One of the things I love to do in my practice is have women and their partners meet once a week. It sounds funny, but like for a family meeting, we call them, and sort of adopted from the wonderful Emily Oster, who talks about managing family life like a business. And I really feel strongly about this, that there are things that are connected to our whole conversation today: mental load, doctor's appointments for the kids, who's getting toilet paper in the house, we're out of garbage bags, I miss you, when are we having a date night? Like, so much of this, I actually think, can feel more containable if we had a time and a space where partners could really talk in this way. So I really like to help facilitate that. And then it's their job to continue and foster that. But this idea of a 1 hour of a week, many like Sundays, many Thursdays going into the weekends, I'm really having a rough week at work, I need an hour this Saturday to get to Soul Cycle, whatever it is. I really see that as being building and connecting for partners to just also talk about what they miss in each other, and dialectically look forward to ways that they can find more connection for each other. So,
Elizabeth, where can the people find you?
oh my goodness, my website, my Instagram, you're going to send that out later, whatever that means. And I'm just so happy to be back in touch with you. And I can't wait to help support more and more of the people in your community. And I just think you do amazing work. So thank you for having me.
Of course. Loved our conversation. Thanks so much. And we will chat, of course, soon.